Привіт! I'm Chuck Olinik. I'm a Ukrainian-American who was baptized with the name Yaroslav, which is the name I use in the Society for Creative Anachronism, a historical reenactment group. Well, I've been inundating viewers of my channel with all sorts of stuff Slavic. And in exploring matters Slavic, I've shown you the Tryzubs, the national emblem of Ukraine. Now, if you watch my channel at all, or if you're a friend on Facebook and you've seen the short reels that I put out, you'll see a couple of different versions of the Tryzubs in my Shaping Ukraine videos, which are covering the war, and my daily short reels on the art coming out of the war in Ukraine, and also the daily posts that I put up. And you'll see either the Tryzub itself, or sometimes what you'll see is a bunch of leaves around it. Well, those leaves are supposed to be representing the Kalena. Some would call it the Gelder rose or the European cranberry. And that's another, Ukrainian emblem. When I'm being medieval, you're going to see the Tryzub usually in connection with the Rurikid dynasty of 10th to 12th century Kyivan Rus. The different rulers used variants of the Tryzub, seals and stamps, because they're showing property rights, right? They're putting their mark on something, but it doesn't really resemble Western European heraldry. That's because the origins of these and other seals came from the East. A Tamga was an abstract seal or stamp that was used by Eurasian nomads and by cultures influenced by them. It was normally a clan thing or a tribe or a family emblem, and they were common among the Eurasian nomads throughout the classical antiquity period and the Middle Ages. Similar Tamga-like symbols were sometimes adopted by sedentary peoples who were adjacent to the Pontic-Caspian steppe, both in Eastern Europe and in Central Asia, which we're going to connect to later. Okay, the Tamga was probably originally like a brand or a mark of ownership that was placed on horses, cattle, and other livestock. All of a sudden, I've got the music from the High Chaparral in my head. It became, at a very early date, something like a European coat of arms or a European crest. When Turkic clans took over more urban areas, Tamgas tended to drop out of use as far as a pastoral way of life was starting to go away and be forgotten. When the Turks took over Western Anatolia after winning the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, they became the Sultanate of Rome and adopted the then Muslim symbol of the Seal of Solomon after the Sultanate disintegrated into a mass of feuding Ghazi states. So keep in mind cultural borrowing. There was a big thing that I would always talk about with my kids in the classroom about two cultures come together. They're rubbing up against each other. Guess what? They're going to start sharing traits. It's what happens, whether it's words, jumping over, or, which is why you have Spanglish. And, because we go for the easier word, or it could be because, we're borrowing cultural items. So the Tamga, which I keep thinking of as a brand, it's basically a rune. Well, take a look at the different shapes over here, and you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner something that looks a lot like a Tryzub. So when the Khazars came in, I know, you want to say Khazar or Khazar, but the KH is like an H, so say it that way. The Khazars, they come in and they're having contact with sedentary cultures, and they brought in their Tamga too. And this one sure looks like the Tryzub. I have that! Oh my god, I gotta dig that out. Okay, now, this next one, that's from Bulgaria. Alright, so people that are settled start doing the cultural borrowing. Here's another far-reaching, influential group that spread Tamgas around. The Mongols, right? The word Tamga in Mongolian means seal or stamp. All right, so you got certain emblems that were historically used by various tribes or clans, and in the Mongol Empire, a Tamga was a seal that was placed on taxed items. Well, that's going to affect commerce. And remember, the Mongols came into Russia, they burned Kyiv, all these, other places, and they were taxing the people. All right? That's what rulers do. Certain Tamga were adopted by individual medieval Mongol and Turkic rulers, and they ended up showing up on coins and seals used by these rulers. You can find a bunch on Islamic coins issued by the descendants of Chinggis Khan, although I keep wanting to say, in honor of Bill and Ted, that most excellent barbarian Genghis Khan. Now we get down to the Tryzub. And I gotta tell you, I grew up with this. The Tryzub was everywhere in the house. One of them hung in the living room so that everyone knew we were a Ukrainian home. One of them hung in what was my bedroom and is now my office, the Vault of Knowledge, because you have to have a pompous name. So the Tryzub becomes the sign of the Rurikid dynasty. Those guys that came from the north, all right? Came from Scandinavia, Norsemen, Varangians, and Sviatoslav began using the Tryzub, except that if you look closely, the Tryzub isn't a Tryzub that Sviatoslav is using. It's not a trident. A little Ukrainian lesson. Один, два, три. All right? And zub, tooth or teeth. All right? So you've got 3 teeth, trident. So what he's using is a bident. But never mind. The Tryzub, which is a znak, a sign, that's getting put on everything. It's getting put on coins. It's getting put on seals. It is getting put on bricks and tiles. But it's really Volodymyr the First, or Volodymyr the Great, or Saint Volodymyr, the one who got baptized, the one who had the idols toppled. He starts using the Tryzub. He's having it put on coins, and he used a number of different versions of the Tryzub. Then you see the descendants of Volodymyr, like Yaroslav. He's using a couple of different versions of the Tryzub, and Mstislav is using another version, and Iziaslav's using another. Sviatopolk is using a bident. And then you start looking at some of the later ones, and the later ones start to look like the Tamga again. So there's probably like about 40 different theories of how the Tryzub originated. One that I was told as a child, which evidently was a story that's gone around because I found this particular graphic online, was that the Tryzub was made up of the names of the greatest of the rulers. So the thing that looks like a B, if you squint, that's pronounced V in Russian or Ukrainian, right? So that's for Volodymyr. And then a circular thing, hey, that's an O, that's for Olha, all right, who converted to Eastern Orthodoxy or to Christianity. And then eventually Volodymyr's going to get the hint. And then if you look at the far end, the thing that looks like a backwards R, that's pronounced Ya, and that's the first letter in the name of Yaroslav. And I got no clue as to who the L is supposed to represent. All right, the L is that third one in the row. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of perspective on this emblem that you'll be seeing around, not just because of the news, but because some people are using it in the society. Thought I'd show this off. Made by a friend of mine who also, he did this at the beginning of the war in Ukraine and put my knight's chain on it. And because you will always see variations. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you subscribe to the channel, because that would be really freaking cool. And until the next time, when I show up and I bring you more tales from the Borderland. Do побачення.